May I ask my first question? Oh, okay.
So it's recording now. So yeah, I did not hear questions in advance. So these
Yeah,
might
I know, I know, I know.
awkward.
It's I know.
Um, but
Yeah.
so best I can in the
Uh,
moment.
yeah. So my first question is, who or what inspired you to devote your academic expertise to this field of education?
Can you ask that again?
Yeah. Who or what inspired you to devote your academic expertise to this field of education?
Um, I mean, I've always been interested in games, and when I went to grad school, um, I went to a Master of Fine Arts program in design and technology. So I was looking to um, use technology to make art and design projects. And then I quickly realized that like all the things that I was creating ended up being games for whatever reason. Uh,
Mhm.
so, and I knew that I wanted to be a professor because I wanted to keep making things and I wanted to be in that environment where people were learning and teaching people, helping them. Um, and so I sort of like accidentally fell into it. It wasn't something that I intentionally was like, I'm gonna become a game design professor. It was just like I wanted to make things. I ended up making games, and so I ended up teaching people how to make games because that's just something I fell into that I was passionate about. So it wasn't like a particular person. It was just a natural kind of like, I don't know, like a magnetism that kind of pulled me in that direction. Um, so it was basically an accident.
Okay. What what's a game um that you feel um that stimulates, like when you play it, like it
Mhm.
stimulates your heart and you feel like it's beating really fast, or it's just stimulates your mind? What's a game that that has that effect on you?
So do you mean like a game that I find affects me strongly? Or do you mean a game that is very exciting? Like, is it a game that has a very strong impact on me? Is a game that like I really find like, I don't know, interesting? Or one
I
that I'm
got
compelled to play? Or
I guess what's a game that had a really big impact on you?
a game that had a really big impact on me?
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, gosh, I mean, I guess a lot of games had an impact on me. Um, I mean, the first one that came to mind was The Last of Us Part Two. Um,
Mhm.
I just recently started replaying it since it came out originally, and I played it. So it's actually my favorite game, and I don't know if you've played it, but yeah, I think it's like it really impacted me because the way that the game was designed, as far as like getting you to realize multiple aspects of, I guess, giving you empathy for people who don't have empathy, um, was like it just like resonated a lot with me to be able to see the humanity of all people who seem to lack humanity. And just like the way that the narrative unfolded, like just the characterization of people and how deep and complicated they are, as well as just like how visually stunning it is, and how kind of like kind of hyper real those characters and those people are. I remember like I played through it in a few days. I think it was maybe 4 days. So I was, playing it for like 8 hours a day or something, like, kind of a lot, like very heavily. And then like having finally beaten the game and like being completely unable to turn it off. being something that I'm just like going through it in my head over and over and over again and thinking about the characters, their relationships to each other, how they were feeling, why they did the things that they did, and all of the emotions that that inspired had a really strong impact on me, and a lot of things from the game resonated a lot, like in terms of thematically, like in terms of like violence, for instance. I'm very drawn to violence, like depictions of violence, and it's a very violent game. So yeah, that was one game. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I definitely relate to that because I felt that, especially from the first one.
Hmm. Yeah, the first one was great too.
What's what's one thing you love about yourself?
One thing I love about myself,
Hmm.
um, in some ways, I love how unbalanced I am. Um, so personally, I tend to have like two modes. One mode which is very lazy, very don't do much, very inactive, hard to like force myself to do anything, and then another side which is like obsessive. Um, and so that obsessiveness like can come from different things. Like anxiety is one thing that makes me obsessive, and things that are just like very stimulating in certain ways. And so I can become obsessed with trying to accomplish certain things. Like if it's like making something, if I'm really deep into making something, then that's all I can think about. It's all I can do. Like that's my life. That's what I'm doing. And like I can't do anything else. And that can be like sometimes detrimental in the moment, but like it allows me to accomplish things that like I never expected to be able to accomplish. Um, like writing a book, for instance. I hate writing. I didn't expect to be able to do that, and like to be able to harness that kind of like imbalance it's amazing. Like to be able to make games and put them out there in the world, which take a lot of work, a lot of time. So like being able to harness that kind of imbalance, harness the anxiety, harness like whatever feelings I'm feeling and being able to channel them into something else is something I really like about myself.
That is a great quality.
Sort of. I mean, I like it a lot in terms of like it allows me to do shit, and that's important to be able to accomplish things because that affects like your sense of self-worth, your self-confidence, just like how you feel about yourself. And it feels good to be able to accomplish things, especially if they're kind of fueled by negative emotions. So I appreciate being able to do that.
Um, what are what are three questions you wish you knew the answer to?
What are three questions you wish or I wish I knew the answer to?
Hmm.
Like three ultimate questions or just any three questions?
Any question, any ultimate question about
The ultimate
anything.
question, okay. Like something that's unknowable, like general.
Sure.
Oh, that's a hard one. That's one that I could have benefited from some time to reflect on.
Okay. Okay. I could change. I could.
But
We don't have to ask that then. We don't have to answer
um,
that.
I mean, there are lots of because there's so many things I want to know the answers to. So many questions. A lot of them are inconsequential. A lot of them are just like basic, facts about things randomly. But like, some of them are how to navigate people, how to make people understand certain things, or how to bring people together. Um, things that like are not so simple, and are often like human oriented because humans are a harder thing to understand than a lot of like things in the universe. So like how to bring people together. Like I'm very focused on conflicts happening in the world right now, and so you know I would really like to know how to make people understand each other better and to look past their differences. Um, that's something I would like to know for sure. So that I can possibly do that and have positive impacts on the world. And I've actually thought about this question before, and I mean, I remember one thing I asked myself at some point was whether I would ever make something significant again. It's not something that really serves any purpose, but it is something that like I was really wanting to understand that moment because I hadn't made anything in a while. So that's another thing. And then you said 3, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, and then just, I mean, almost everything. I want to know almost everything. Like, I'm interested in the world and what's outside of it or what isn't. I'm interested in all knowledge. Um, I want to know and understand everything. So it's kind of hard to like limit it to one thing beyond that. Besides, like, I constantly have questions. I have like, I have a tattoo of a question mark on my arm because I am curious about everything, curious about the world, and I question everything as well. Like I question reality, I question my assumptions, my biases, I question what I've been told. I question what I tell people. So it's yeah, it's hard to limit it to specific things besides like in any given moment I have a bunch of questions. Like right now, my question is if my girlfriend's sister's girlfriend, who is Israeli, had to serve in the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces. That's a question I've been asking myself since yesterday. So it's not an ultimate question, but there are constant questions that I'm asking. So there are several.
Okay. Um, Next one is, what do you want to do before you die?
What do I want to do before I die?
Yeah. Like, what's one thing you want to achieve to um fulfill before you die? The ultimate objective.
I mean, before I die, that sounds so like, I mean, I don't know a lot of what I will want before I die, unless I die like right now, um, which could happen. Well, nope, not anymore. It's already gone. But that moment passed. But um, like I would like to. I mean, I would like to get promoted. So I have like um in my title, I have one more rank that I could get promoted to. In terms of like professorial rank. That's something I would like to do. It's not like a major thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of like my career, that's one thing. I mean, I would like to, I don't know, continue. I guess it's not like one specific thing, but like continue finding love in my life. And I have love. I have friends. I have a partner. I have family. But I would like to continue that, continue um, developing relationships with people and connecting with them and loving them in whatever way, different ways. So, because I think that's really important to me and really like a fundamental part of being happy and satisfied. And so I don't want that to stop. So that's not like one specific thing that's like I can just check off, but that's like a continuous thing until I die. Yeah.
What this is like a random one, but
Uh-huh.
do you believe in ghosts? And if so, do you have any experiences? Have you ever
That
had an
is
experience?
that is a random question. Um, do I believe in ghosts? I'd say practically no. Like I don't actively believe in ghosts. do I believe ghosts are possible? Absolutely. I believe ghosts are possible. I don't know if they exist. I don't believe they exist, but I also like I think anything is possible. Like I really think that ghosts could exist. I just they don't exist in a way that I understand. Um, and I mean, do I have any personal experiences with them? One of my first jobs was at a video rental store
Mm-hmm.
in Houston. It was a Hollywood Video, which was like the second largest like movie and game rental store in the country after Blockbuster. So this was like in 2005-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked at this video rental store that actually took place it was located in an old theater. Like it was an old, I think it was a movie theater from like the 20s. Um, and sometimes after we would close, I would notice that after we had put everything back and all the shelves were like clean and nice, sometimes some of the like we had like DVD cases that had like the movies. Customers pulled them up to the front to rent them, and sometimes like those would be turned on their side, like they'd be kind of like selected, like like a shelf of them, and then like you turn one on its side, so they'd be like kind of sticking out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I noticed this how would happen after we put everything up, and I asked my manager about it, and he said that it was haunted, that the store was haunted, and um, apparently like two or three people had died in the store.
Oh.
So like in the 40s or 50s, there had been a shooting. I think it was like a murder suicide or something that happened in when it was back when it was a theater. Um, so there was that, and then like maybe 10 years before I worked there, they had a public restroom because it was like required by law in Houston. And someone had overdosed on heroin and died in the bathroom.
Wow.
Um, so I don't know if that was a ghost or just like someone just fucking with everyone or what, but it was mysterious, and I would like to believe in ghosts and supernatural things. I just don't have I don't have a rational way of believing in them. But I believe in possibility for sure.
What what do you think it means to be human?
What do I think it means to be human? I have no idea. I don't know what it means
Okay.
to be human. I don't have a way of like qualifying someone's humanity, of saying whether something is or isn't human, or the extent of that. I mean, there's like, I think it's just like, there are traits that we associate with being human and humanity. Um, like language, for instance, the ability to communicate using language, or the fact that we have certain kinds of genetic material, or the fact that we look a certain way. There's a certain, we like generally have eyebrows, we generally have eyes, we generally have mouths, and we generally have two arms, two legs, etc. And I think there's like certain traits that are, you can say that if someone has a certain amount of those traits, then that makes them human. um,
Mm,
and so if someone's missing some of those traits, that doesn't mean they're not human. Like if someone's doesn't have arms, for instance, doesn't mean they're not human. But like having a lot of those traits can mean that somebody like that can mark someone as human, or we understand them to be human, if they have enough of those traits that we have in common. So it's not like there's a clean definition of human, at least the way I understand it, but there are, a whole bunch of traits that humans have in common mostly. And so if someone has enough of those traits, then they become human.
okay.
So, if someone has like a genetic anomaly, like if someone has like Down syndrome or something, which is a, genetic difference, like they're still human, even though that's a difference. So it's not like we have to be exactly the same. But there's there's room for difference, but there's no prescriptive qualifications for what makes someone human. Like you don't have to have, you don't have to have language, for instance. That's something I associate with humans, but there are people who are deaf and mute. There are people who are, in a coma, or people who are brain dead even, we could still say are human. But like, some of those major ones, like language, is maybe something that is more important to qualifying someone as human, for instance. So if someone in like, higher brain function, so if someone is brain dead, maybe they have less of a claim to being human than either of us, potentially. I don't know. I'm not here to like define the limits of what it means to be human, but like in my view, that's what makes someone human, is having enough of those significant traits. And we can recognize those.
Um,
Does that answer your question?
yeah. I don't know which question I want to ask next, because all right, which one would be more interesting?
Uh-huh.
Um, have you ever pondered the nature of reality, or what is the meaning of life?
Not the second one. Uh,
Damn.
yeah, not the second one. I mean, that one's a boring answer. Um,
Okay.
but the first one, however, question, can you say it again?
Have you ever pondered the nature of reality?
Pondered the nature of reality? Yes, a lot. Uh, the nature of reality is something I have questioned a lot in my life, since I was a child. Um, so, I mean, probably earlier, but like my first memory of questioning it is when The Matrix came out, the movie The Matrix. I don't know if you've seen it. It came out in 1999.
Iconic.
Yeah, so I saw it in theaters, and it really made me question what is real and how do I know it's real? Because ultimately, like all of our ways of justifying that this consensus reality, like that you and I, the things we see, the spaces we occupy are real. The only way we can justify them is with our other experiences in this reality. And so, if those are wrong, if this is all a dream, then we can't possibly know it. We can't possibly know if this is a simulation or not, because the only evidence we have is from within the simulation. We don't know if this is a dream or not, because all of the logic could be dream logic. So I have kind of constantly questioned that in my life. And one thing, I mean, and then when I was like 19, I did like a lot of mushrooms one time on accident. Um, and that also firmly kind of like put me in the camp of I don't know it's real. And there's no way for me to know that, because when I took that large amount of mushrooms that I was told was a reasonable amount, but was not, um, I experienced ego death, which is where um, you don't have any sense of identity anymore, who you are. You're not a person. You don't know you don't have access to it. It's sort of like amnesia or something. And then I experienced the beginning of the universe, and then I experienced billions of years of stellar evolution. Um,
Oh,
and so I experienced like subjectively more than I had in my whole life, in which the rules were completely different for what was real and what wasn't real. And there was nothing more real about this than that. And so recognizing that is like, if my entire life and all my experiences can be like a drop in the bucket compared to this one mushroom trip, which was, millions of times longer than my life experiences, then how can I know anything is real? I mean, like, I have like faith that this reality will probably continue based on my experiences. But I don't know if this is ultimate or if this is just, a fever dream or not. Yeah, I've questioned or I've pondered the nature of reality a lot. And I'm very drawn to media that does that as well. So, I mean, my grad school thesis was about this also.
What was your grad school thesis about?
It was about how we don't know what's real, basically. It was a mix.
Mm,
It was I mean, I guess you could call it a mixed reality. It had a virtual reality component and a physical component. Um,
mm,
where there was like a physical window that had a reflection projected into that window. That was a virtual recreation of the room that the window was in, the physical room. So there was like a 3D model of the room that this piece was installed in. And then people could put on this Oculus Rift headset and they could enter that virtual space on the other side of the window, which was it's just a virtual reality version of the room. And they could interact with people through the other side of the room. So they could look in, there was a virtual window. It's very hard to explain um, casually, but like uh, they could be in this VR simulation and they could look out of this virtual window in the virtual space and see real people in the real space. Um, and then from there was another virtual reality headset in the virtual space that is a reflection of the physical space that they're in, and they can go inside another layer of reality
mm.
there where they enter another virtual space within the virtual space. Um, so I don't know if any of that made sense, but
Yeah, it sounds like Inception. It's not here.
yeah, it is like, you know, along the same lines as Inception. And, you know, obviously Christopher Nolan does a lot of like questioning reality and the nature of reality. So like, yeah, Inception, Interstellar, Tenet, Memento. Um, yeah, good, good director.
Um, oh, who's the most interesting person you know or have met?
The most interesting person I know or have met. It's a good question. Sorry, I'm like reflecting on various people who have like you said most interesting?
Mhm. Who's the most interesting, or maybe the most captivating, or maybe someone who you found so fascinating, or um, maybe even a conversation or a type of conversation where you find yourself most stimulated or engaged in.
Um, I mean, I guess like I had I used to have a friend named Clinton, who I was friends with in college, who's a psychopath. Um, and I mean that like literally, I don't mean that like just to slight him. Like he knows he's a psychopath in terms of like he has like basically like no empathy for people, in terms of like he has no affective empathy, meaning he doesn't feel the same things that other people feel. Um, so he doesn't feel bad if he does bad things to people, but he has a lot of cognitive empathy, which means that he can understand what people are thinking very intuitively. And so he's an extremely manipulative person. Um,
Mm,
and so I've spent years of my life talking to other friends about him, about his behavior and how he manipulates people, uses everyone around him. When I met him, he was just a drug dealer. Um, and and then he moved to California and he ended up like buying a weed farm and then like ended up like turning into like a cannabis industry consultant and became like a millionaire through legitimate means. And he possibly brought COVID um, to the US.
oh.
Um, and yeah, I mean, he's, yeah, multimillionaire. He has he owns like an edibles company with my friend that they employ like 40 or 50 people in San Francisco. Um, and yeah, he would travel all over the world. Like he would just like be like he would go to the airport without knowing where he's going, and then he would meet someone in the airport, and then he'd spend a month traveling with them in Europe. Um, like
Interesting.
kind of insane, like kind of an insane person who leads an insane life, who's very fascinating, and very toxic. But yeah,
Yo, I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
really see him
lie.
anymore. But what?
Uh, I'm not gonna lie, but I noticed that usually the people who are like fucked up, toxic, or are like a mess in general,
Mm,
usually are like one of the most interesting people I meet.
mm,
Like I have a friend named Jennifer. I'm
uh,
not going to expose her, but like there's a lot of stuff that aren't right with her,
uh,
but she is the most funniest, charismatic. She's so engaging and she
mm,
has like crazy stories and like
uh,
literally every time I hang out with her, it's always an adventure. And
yeah,
it's just like it's like yeah. Yeah. So
but
I
like
definitely
maybe
relate
toxic.
to that. Yeah.
I
Oh,
see.
it definitely could be toxic, but there's pros and cons to everybody.
Sure. Yeah. Nobody is 100% anything. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, and oftentimes like I don't know about your friend, but like people who are like psychopaths are incredibly charismatic. Um, which is what makes them also very fascinating because they're so easily able to manipulate people to do what they want, and people feel compelled to for some reason. Which yeah, and then you wonder why. You ask yourself, why is this? I don't know. So it's easy to become obsessed with uh, people who are very interesting. Yeah.
What I guess this would be the last question because I have to go soon. But what do you think makes somebody charismatic?
I think what makes someone charismatic is how able to adapt they are to the specifics of communicating with different kinds of people. So if someone immediately understands like your kind of way you communicate, the way you understand things, and is able to relate to you very easily and have you feel like you're connected to them, is charismatic. Where they meet someone in like either they have lots of like qualities that people like they're interesting and they're admirable and they're bold and um yeah, people, I mean, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's not something I've put a lot of thought into, but
Yeah.
I think like being able to adapt to different people and how they communicate and relate to people, and like for instance like bringing up certain things that you think someone might be interested in, or asking them questions that show that you're interested in them, and like someone who's like able to do that very intuitively, and seem like easily like they don't have to think about it or reflect upon it, it comes very naturally to them, I would say are charismatic.
Mm.
Yeah. And then other qualities that are like kind of associated with like humor, like if they're funny, and like funny, perceptive, um confident, yeah, stuff like that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
And yeah, but yeah, thank you for for letting me do this because
yeah, sure.
yeah,
What is this for?
it's for a project for a class of mine, it's a final. So I'm doing
What's
like
the class?
interviews. Um, it's digital design something.
I mean, what are you doing in the class? What is the type of class?
Um, essentially, I am making like oh, it's called sound design.
Okay, DD 111.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're recording audio is what you're mainly doing? Or
Oh, wait, what just happened?
I don't know. Can you not hear
I
me?
can't hear you now.
I don't know why. It's still showing my recording. Must be on your side.
Um,
You still can't
Juno,
hear
I'm
me?
gonna have to go. I have therapy right now.
Yeah. So I'll yeah.